Good evening. I'm Fred Weiss, Vice Chair of the Board of Supervisors, and I called this special budget meeting to order. Let's rise and give this pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have a fast roll call. Supervisor Lewis,
Present.
Supervisor Bundy,
Here.
and I am here. Supervisor Granger and Supervisor Lombardi will not be with us tonight. We have a quorum, so at this point, I will pass the microphone over to our interim manager.
Hello, everybody. We have Mr. Kurt Ferguson here tonight and some of the department heads to discuss their budgets. The first, we're going to have Mr. Ferguson do an overview of the entire budget, and then we'll move on to some department heads. Ferguson, sure.
Thank you. Dave, can you pull up those slides for me, please? Thank you. Can you go to the next slide, Dave? So again, this will not be long with me. We'll go to the department heads, but the 2023 tentative budget that you have before you does maintain the current overall rate of 20.51 mils. This does maintain a year-end fund balance 2023 of over $3 million. And there'll be projects and a variety of things that we'll go over, but this budget does contemplate the hiring of a new full-time labor in the Public Works Department and converting a part-time finance position to full-time. Next slide, please. Under the header of that I drew up called Updates, Errors, and Omissions, the document that you've had from a week ago or so that I gave, there's a couple of items that that need updated. And the first of those is year-end projection under the capital budget, page 58 that I put down, that had $25,000 for engineering expenses. That should have been listed at 225. That requires an additional $195,000 from the rescue plan to be transferred in 2023 that we can go over. That was planned all along. I originally had 225 in there. Somehow, I obviously inadvertently deleted the two. That will change the rescue plan transfer from 465 to 660. Can we go to the next slide, please? I have a few of these. Tim Chamberlain, your new fire services director, had put together, and I had these in the tentative budget before, and somehow it didn't get transferred over. It's a marginal net increase, but it needs to be worth noting. First will be a discussion he'll inevitably have with you about fire inspection fees. That will raise an additional $24,000. Additional expenditures of $47,000 that are things that he's talked to you about, and he talked about coming onto this position regarding recruitment and training, uniforms, what have you. The net cost to the fire services budget, not the general budget, of $23,000. Next slide, please. Public Works. One other update was under leaf collection, where we have labor assigned for the weeks or so that they're working on leaves. That number needed to be updated from the 136 listed to 156 with an additional cost to the general fund of 20,000 and change. Still will keep the fund balance above $3 million. Final slide for this, please. If you could go to the next one, Dave. In the Park and Recreation budget, the department will have the need for 2 mowers next year. One of those, a little more than $10,000, which would go in, advised to be going into purchase outright. And then a John Deere, a much larger John Deere tractor at almost $59,000 with the recommendation that that be financed as we've done for more expensive pieces of equipment for each department. Total capital costs next year would be $23,000 more that's in your budget, would lower the fund balance in Park and Recreation at the end of 2023 from 79,000 to just under 56. We go to the next slide, Dave.
That way you don't have to bulk up this.
Thank you. First off, as I put together in the budget that you have before you, there were a variety of projects that were approved by the board earlier this year that have been memorialized in the document itself. And I just want to go through those so you understand what's outlined. And I have the funding, obviously, these being in the sewer proceeds account, the Schuyler Tennis Courts, Veterans Park, ADA, Memorial Park, shade structures, secret garden, surface, with all of the amounts from the sewer proceeds account. Can you go to the next slide, Dave? We'll continue on with Park and Rec projects from earlier this year, Keola Lights, Pocket Park at Veterans Park, Heathcock Park, each for 100,000. Updates to the pool bathroom that have been discussed for a number of years as well for 100,000. Next slide, please. The Maple Vale Drainage Project, which was approved earlier in the year, very early in the year, was discussed originally in 2021. The cost for that, there is a split between 2022 and 2023 that is in the document itself. I didn't do the split here. That was approved. We have the Woodside Bike Path Project that I did not put a dollar amount in, but it is in the budget for 2 years to make sure we capture that cost, and also is being covered by a grant. Township building renovations. There was an amount budgeted in 2022 this year for $135,000. This is an American Rescue Plan project that was funded out of there from last year. It is carried over if the board is interested in pursuing that, but that number has gone up to $200,000. I think we did bid that out this year, and that bid was rejected as those prices came over. Next slide, please. We have two things here for the fire services. The first is financing a Tahoe for the fire services director. I think, as we talked about before, as the fire services director oversees the volunteer service, emergency service generally with fire, the director having his own vehicle that is a township vehicle would seem appropriate. That would be financed over 5 years with $14,442, again, from the fire fund being recommended. Mr. Chamberlain can address this later when he speaks. An air bottle filling station that he can talk about. We talked about briefly in our individual meetings. I will say that the funding for that is should say rescue plan funding. My apology. We would pay for that out of the fire fund, but that is being recommended to come from the rescue plan funding. The funding that remains that you have, I think the board has tried to be very equitable in putting that out for stormwater and park and rec and safety issues, that it certainly is I think falls under that umbrella of an extraordinary expense that Tim can talk to you about when he comes up here. Next slide, please. I have two more items here, and your public works director is here, but I'll speak to the financial component of this. Originally, it would not have been contemplated this year that we would be going in aggressive on capital equipment in the public works department. As I'm sure you all are aware, and Derek will speak to soon, there has been significant delays in getting equipment delivered. Some of the equipment that I'm seeing now, that we're seeing now, could be 15, 18 months out, but it is fairly unpredictable. And I think the concern, at least that Derek had strongly expressed to me, was if we wait another year to order things and these delays continue. We could be looking years out to get pieces of equipment that we would reasonably conclude should be replaced fairly soon. So with that in mind, you'll see we have a 10-wheel dump truck with funding coming from the rescue plan, with the recommendation of that being purchased outright. Costs this year have gone up. As obviously everyone knows, the recommendation is that $50,000 be used from the rescue plan to stay on the paving schedule that had been outlined under the current 3-year plan. Next slide, please. Should have had these in order. I apologize. I'll go back to equipment that we'll talk about. In the end, this budget as well is recommending a 6-wheel dump truck and a pickup truck that would be financed out of the road machinery fund. Because the road machinery fund we did not anticipate having 2 pieces being funded in there. The fund just for this year would be a little bit short, and there's the recommendation for $20,000 or so that we can talk when we get to the rescue plan account going into the road machinery fund. It's that consistent theme that if we move up the timing of these purchases, it will put a strain just because of the challenges that are faced. The road machinery fund has been used, and we've leased pieces of equipment over time, and we've staged them. There's going to be pieces of equipment that will be coming off this year. So there's going to be that room that will open up that would certainly accommodate those expenses moving forward. I don't have any other slides at this point. I just want to make a couple of other points before you go to the department heads. There are a couple of other items that are in the rescue plan that was outlined in my letter that went to all of you. You have that letter, Chief? You have the cover letter for the budget? Mine's double-sided. I didn't. What is there? I'm sorry. Yeah, no, these are the slides. That's not it. Jim must have done this print because it's double-sided. He's not back there. So as I outline in the letter to all of you, no, I don't have the letter. There are a couple of items out of the rescue plan that we're advising this year. And again, I'll let Derek and talk about this when he comes up. One of those items is $100,000 this year to be dedicated to tree maintenance, tree removal, what have you. One of the challenges that we've had this year is, and Monica's had it in parks as well, has been this abundance of trees, of limbs, of trimming, of dead trees that we have to take care of regardless of whether we've budgeted for or not. Thank you. So I do have $100,000 that is being suggested would be placed from the rescue plan fund into the general fund to assist the Public Works Department, Derek, with doing that. One of the things that's not in the budget that you all could contemplate, the budget that is in place for Monica to do the same thing, is probably a fraction of what it needs to be. Her budget just cannot sustain, as an example, a $50,000 or a $60,000 allocation for trees in the parks, although it is likely justified. She'll tell you we've spent about that much this year, even though we hadn't planned on it. So it's something for you to contemplate. The only other item I would point out in the end is I do have also for the American Rescue Plan $100,000 being suggested to come over to assist for all the IT upgrades we've had to make as a result of the problems, the breach that we had earlier in the year. Those expenses were far in excess of what we anticipated for this year. We've upgraded for greater security for next year, and that's strain on the budget. We're lucky that we have that money there if you so choose to use it to offset those costs moving forward. That's all I have at this point. If there's something in particular you want to ask or you just want to go to department heads, I'm certainly here to discuss anything you want to talk about.
Do any of the supervisors have comments at this point? Or questions?
I don't.
I'll hold off till we get to the department heads. Mike's on Zoom. Okay.
I'm sorry. Can I actually, do you mind if I say one more thing? It's not a slide, but I do want to make sure I talk about this real quick. I apologize. If you look into your budget, under the golf budget, which is page 42. Starts on page 42. And it would be actually specifically on page 46. With with the golf course not having a debt payment being mandated to be made. One of the things last year that was put in place was using the excess revenue to go towards other things. The general fund is still owed $1,365,000. So if you look on page 46, 492,001, you'll see that budgeted from the golf course to go to the general fund is $455,000. That represents a payment that would, if you equally apply that 455,000 a year, this year, next year, 2023, 2024, and 2025. The funding for Park and Rec capital, which was put in last year, which helped for the bike path, would be $150,000. $75,000 going to the golf bond repayment fund. There is a page in here that outlines what the aggregate debt was that was paid off. But $75,000 also being transferred to the new golf capital account, which is meant to sit and assist for long-term capital costs, such as the irrigation system that Mike has talked about over the years. And the good news is that the golf course, as budget contemplated in 2022, will be able to support all of those transfers as outlined in 2022. That would be the column right to the left. So that budget for golf next year, the budget would still show a fund balance, if you look at the bottom of page 46 on the right, of about $97,000, which gives some room for unexpected events, even having more money to potentially go to one of those transfer items, or a new one if you wanted to do so, for next year. Thank you. Now I'm done. I apologize.
You good? Good. All right, Mike, how are you? Mike, just do me a favor, and because you're on Zoom, just introduce yourself and then go ahead and present for golf.
Sure. It's Michael Tara. I'm the president of Spirit Golf, managing the property, Makefield Highlands Golf Club, and glad to be here to talk through the golf budget. So as Kurt kind of alluded to in his update there, the golf operation has been running a little ahead of budget this year, which is great. The numbers you have through your projections are through September, and our year-end projections are still falling at about where we put these budget numbers together. So picking up from page 1 on the revenue side, I think you can see my page 1. Sorry, I guess it's 40. Kurt, is it 43 in the folder?
Starts on page 42, I believe, Mike.
42, the golf revenue page.
Hold on.
42 golf.
Right, 42, Mike.
Yep. So, not being, our projections on green fees and cart fees are, and even the practice range, which has been doing very well. We're still keeping those in a relatively, careful position with, weather and other things, other factors that could take place. Green fees look like they might hit 1.65 million this year. We're budgeting 1.55. So, with those factors, we want to be careful, and, we still can, develop this budget where, it's still meeting the needs of the transfers and the other balances we're looking for at year end. Starting the year, obviously, we started at a negative 120. And with that, we still find ourselves in a pretty good position in 22 to make those transfers. Food and beverage has been doing really well. Had what is going to be our best year. Looks like we're going to hit over $900,000 this year. So it's been doing some really great numbers.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. Bundy is certainly helping the bottom line for sure. So thank you. But yeah, no, it's been great. And banquet business, we still think there's more opportunity as we continue to come out of COVID and look to book more parties, more events, and people are starting to do more of that. So that is hopeful that will continue to grow. But again, just trying to be mindful of the budget we've and being smart about it. I think the number of 3.54 million on our income line is going to fall in as a very safe number. We still have some room, we think, there. So any questions on the revenue side before I move on?
Last year, we introduced Top Tracer.
Yeah.
And I know that started relatively well. Where are we in terms of revenue for Top Tracer? And have we paid off the costs associated with it?
Yeah, we're pretty close. I mean, I think you can, our numbers are falling in that plus 200,000 on the practice range. That's where that money is being applied. So we're seeing that increase in the driving range activity. We were doing probably 160s, 170s. COVID kind of with the increase on the Top Tracer, obviously on the pricing, bumped that up. So we're probably 50, 60,000 ahead of where we were prior to that. So yeah, it's getting real close to being paid off at this point. So by, I would think, June of next year, July next year, it'll be fully paid.
In the numbers that you have on page 42, the year to date is 11/3/22. Is that now corrected to the actual numbers as of 11/3 because it wasn't previous versions?
Which one, John? I'm sorry.
The golf course revenue, page 42. The year to date is 11/3/22. So these were when we talked previously. Those hadn't been updated, but these are the updated numbers.
The updated we have are from November 3rd. Just keep.
Yeah.
We're always trailing them a little bit.
Yep.
So yeah. So
Yeah.
that 1,368,500, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, that would be as of, and again,
That's as of September 30th, that number.
Oh, okay. So September 30th is the numbers that we're looking at then for your 2022 actuals.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, that's actual September year end as of September 30th.
so just so you're aware, I'm not disagreeing with Mike. If we would have gone in and had some updates, they would have done that as of 11/3. So some of those items could be updated again. There's a trail between sometimes the software that they have and when we update that. So
Right. So, but we're comfortably saying that that's basically September 30th number then for actuals.
The 1,368,000 is the September 30th. amount.
Yes, all the revenues are as of September 30th.
Okay.
I just
So then the
checked them.
projecteds seem to tie as likely then.
The
Yeah.
year-end numbers that we did was with Mike's software when we zoomed as a group to make sure that those numbers.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. Yep. Should I move on to on the expense side, the following page. I don't think there were any real any big changes in any of these numbers that that had any impact versus our projected the only question we'll have is water irrigation, we generally don't spend what we spent this year. We've had 2 years of really high expense, 2010 being the other year. And then again, in 2022 being a very dry summer. But that 12.5 for water on line 363 is generally an average, but is one of those numbers that is hard to predict. The good news is when it's dry, there's less rain days. So then the revenues tend to go up and cover that cost. One or 2 days of missed weather could be, 40, 50,000 swing. So pays for a lot of water. So nothing much on the golf maintenance. We do actually anticipate we could probably save a little money from this prior year. And we got a little drop in the equipment lease. One of the leases ends in 2023. So we should anticipate a savings there. Range supplies, we'll continue to kind of track the range. We did have some extra expense this year. So we have some extra golf balls going into 23. So we anticipate we'll actually spend a little bit less there as well. On the golf expense too. Oops, sorry, my spreadsheet moved. Just running through the lines. I don't think there were any, again, nothing significant on the expenditures. A couple of them are relative to revenues. Pro shop, you can see pro shop salaries and hourly, that really fluctuates based on lesson income. So if there's more lesson income, those numbers go up. We had a pretty strong lesson year, so they went up. So again, that just really is a revenue driven number. But the actual salaries and hourly we think is in line for the budget. Handicap expense, same thing. It's a revenue driven number. If we sell more handicap services to customers, again, we will see an increase there, but we will also see an increase in revenue. So nothing significant there. So those numbers we feel, again, probably in line relative to the revenue. If revenues go up, we might see a couple of those lines go up like it did this year. Moving on to food and beverage. On the food and beverage side, we did put some increases more relative to 22 because of the increase in revenues we're seeing. Certainly drives up labor, drives up some of the food cost. So some of those are higher numbers than previous budgets, but very much in line with the revenues that we're projecting. So that's really just a percentage game we play. We're trying to manage always to those percentages to try to keep the revenues in line, the expenses in line with revenues. As we jump to the next page on expense 3, finish up on F&B. So again, nothing significant on the expense side that changes operationally. We don't see any huge impacts. We'll probably have some savings on outside services because the tent was paid off. So now we're actually be making, won't be any cost involved with the tent side beyond putting up and taking down at this point. Repairs and maintenance is always a funny one. That number has jumped around over the years. 11.6 is, probably been, the average we've been putting in. So we think that's a fairly good number. Moving down to marketing. We've been trying obviously to increase the marketing of the advertising for the top tracer and as well as our banquet business. Kind of moving more into that wedding wire and some of the pieces that give us some advertising for weddings. So, we anticipate kind of keeping that budget, in that mid-40 number. G&A, again, nothing really significant. Probably our two biggest things that we're looking at is credit card fees, charges, trying to manage credit card fees. They are, obviously as revenue goes up, the credit card fees have been going up. We're looking at some of the cost to that. So hopefully we get some better rates and, maybe I'll have to actually reduce that a little bit, but again, kind of driving off the revenue number that number is completely tied to. Nothing different really in labor. So we should see not much change there. And then just kind of wrapping it up on the balance of the G&A. Again, no real significant changes here. We, clubhouse maintenance is one of those items that, can fluctuate if some piece of equipment over the years. We saw that in maintenance this year, but that was kind of dealt with capital, with the heat and the air conditioning. So I think we have the same thing in the G&A department, as well as we look at the clubhouse, trying to make sure we're just prepared on the capital side, for anything in breakdowns or emergencies. Bunker renovation on the capital purchases is, again, kind of the push to finish those. We are in position to have all this done this spring, and all greenside bunkers will be renovated by springtime. Equipment wise, we're kind of in the same as Park and Rec, as you're talking about dump trucks and other things. We got a year lead time on equipment. It is certainly one of those things I would like to address as far as 2024, and just making sure we're thinking about putting together a plan so that we can at least get orders placed, because we will be looking at fairway units and a couple of other pieces of equipment that will be needed. We looked at our plan, our last equipment plan was kind of set for fairway units 2 years ago. And instead we kind of worked through that with some new reels, and they've been holding up, but we certainly think it's appropriate to look at getting new units for 2024. We do have an opportunity that just arose on the equipment side. One of our rollers, just got a call the other day that the vendor has a roller that we were actually interested in purchasing, that we thought we weren't going to be able to acquire this year because of the supply chain, but he did get one in that came available. So it may be something the board may want to consider. It's about a $28,000 piece of equipment. It's a tournament roller, double wide, so it kind of speeds up the process of what we do currently in rolling greens. Takes a lot of pressure off the greens mowers, and really gets the greens rolling nicely. So that literally just came up. So I just wanted to mention that to the board and Kurt, just to make you aware of that, and Chief. So that's something, I'd like to consider if we can look at that.
Mike, can I ask you a question with that? You're talking about an expense for next year or this year?
Well, it's there now, so it could go either way. I think we could commit to it now and put it into next year's, or if it was something that we could pay for this year, certainly it's available now.
Is that an item that was on CoStars or had been previously bid?
Yeah, it's on CoStars. I got a CoStars contract bid that I can, I will certainly forward everybody.
So there would, so if the board decided to do that, there would not be any impediment that it hadn't been bid properly. That would be
Correct.
Free and clear to do that.
Yeah, no, it's CoStars pricing contract. Correct.
All right, thank you, Mike.
Yep, I think that covers all of it.
Mike, if you want to just touch on these capital projects revenues that we're trying to build over the years, you could just talk real briefly about that to the board.
Sure. Yeah. Obviously, some of the things out there, they do have lifespans, irrigation being one of those, pond liner, something we've broached prior years. Things like that are big ticket items. Carpets are big ticket items that, obviously a lot of pavement. So you do want to plan for those and having that reserve fund, build and put aside. So when the time comes, we're prepared for that. A couple of things on the clubhouse, same thing, roofs and HVAC are going to be things that are going to come down the road. We've we managed through with the HVAC in the clubhouse with some smaller capital improvements. So I think we're okay at the moment, but these are things that you certainly want to have planned out so that, when the time comes, if we need a new roof, we know we got the revenues there for that.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Couple questions, Mike, before I let you go.
Sure.
One, on the wedding and special events business, it's been a challenge. Where are we on that? Versus where we expected to be?
Well, this year, very good, overall for budget. We did back off the budget from, where we were when we were looking at 2019, when we were in 18, when we were kind of planning, thinking that was with the 10 and, but coming out of COVID, we're certainly seeing weddings again. We're booking parties, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, some of the larger events that the tent's using, some big charity events. So it's really worked very well for us. Like I said, we've hit numbers we've never hit before this year. So, plus 900,000 is spectacular for the F&B department. And, they're geared up and excited about pushing that to $1 million. So we think that's doable, with the banquet business, and trying to capture some weddings this year. So like I said, in the marketing, that was one of the things we really want to focus on, pushing some more dollars towards wedding marketing.
And Mike, you would tell anybody, anybody lives in Lower Makefield or even outside of Lower Makefield, if they had a bar, bat mitzvah, a wedding, a special event, or maybe even a charity event,
Yeah,
they should choose Makefield Highlands, right?
yeah, absolutely. It's
I would.
it's I appreciate the commercial, and it really
Yes,
is. It's a great and look at the reviews. That's what we tell people, please take a look at the reviews.
And our views are strong.
Yeah, on the last wedding we just had, we got some wonderful reviews, and so those are the things that speak to the customer and people that are at events speaking to, being at the event. Certainly, word of mouth helps a lot in those type of events.
I can only speak from my own personal experience, but the events I've gone to have been very good. A couple other quick questions, I'll let you go. Pro shop, right? The net on the pro shop, if we're looking, our merchandise sold versus cost of goods, where is our net on that if we looked at it that way?
Yeah, it's okay. It's not as, we'd like to see it a little stronger on the, clubs have a 2-year cycle. So not this year, the year prior, we just had a tremendous club purchase like we were up $30,000 in club sales. That was off this year a little bit, so that impacted us a little. But we see next year again, because the manufacturers really are on 2-year cycles. So we see again, new equipment coming out, new excitement about the clubs, which generally drives more revenue to the merchandise.
Okay, last question on credit card processing. Obviously, I don't know what we were probably paying, what, 3-4% all in or? fully
Yeah,
loaded?
we're kind of locked in. We're locked in at about a 2.6, but
Okay,
where we get more of a ding, you get a little extra charges, card not present charges. So using the dip and chip and having those, because what happened with COVID, going to a model of card on file so that everybody can book online was a great opportunity for us and really helped us manage through COVID. Some of that has kind of lingered where, customers like having their card on file, and but it does cost us a little bit more. So we're trying to kind of retrain the customer to pull out the credit card and again, save that expense for us.
or is there an alternative to think about in terms of, on the processing side? We can shift the frequent flyers that people are in all the time from drawing from a credit card to drawing from a debit card or their checking account through like an ACH and give them some benefit for that. If we could lower rates that way. Or
Yeah, debit card, we certainly could look at ACH.
that one's a little harder, I know.
Yeah, we don't have that availability in the system. Yeah, but yeah, definitely the debit cards would certainly help. They are lower rates.
Yep, okay, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Dan? Any questions? Thanks,
No.
Mike.
You need better lighting, Mike.
Yeah, sorry about that. I could turn on the lights. Sometimes when you
That's
turn them
okay.
on, then my head glows and you can't see anything.
Okay, the next department head
Thank
to
you.
speak on the budget will be Monica Tierney of Parks and Recreation.
As Monica's sitting down, I wrote her a note just so she was aware of this, that as we covered, that I did not cover in a slide, would be projects that were listed in the park fee in lieu of fund, that she can go over, that I felt she would have obviously much better specific detail than I would. So just thank you.
Thanks for the buildup. I'll start there. All right, fee in lieu. There's a significant amount of money sitting in fee in lieu, and we anticipate getting a little bit more money in the very near future. Projects that we're looking to do in fee in lieu of are the Memorial Park East, which we budgeted for last year. We're still waiting to find out about that grant. Hopefully we'll know by the end of the month. It's on page 67. The other project that we put in fee in lieu just recently at a board meeting, I brought up the ADA.
I
Okay.
gave you bad information.
Oh.
It's page 20.
The 5 Mile Wood ADA Pico Green Region grant match. So that's another project that you'd see in fee in lieu of. And one of that we haven't talked about publicly yet, that I'd like the board to consider for a fee in lieu project would be a bike gap project. So filling in some of the path gaps. The ones that we identified were the Woodside to Taylorsville bike path gap, Edgewood Villages, the 3 linkages within the village, and Community Trail, the 2 links continuing on Community Trail. Not that we have to lock in that, but we'd like to look for grant opportunities and having that money set aside for bike path specific project extensions would be something that would fit into the master plan and something that we should consider moving forward. So that is something that we hadn't discussed previously, but did want to include it so that we could look for grants. Also today, well, does anybody have any questions on that before I move on? Yes, those are identified in,
So just so you're aware as well, I'm sorry, if
Yeah.
you look in your budget under revenues, on the revenue side for fee in lieu of is grants that Monica has outlined for possibilities that total $610,000. There's also revenue in there that is consequential, that are the fees that developers pay. So for the public to recognize in the end, all of these projects Monica's talking about are not coming from tax dollars. They're coming from developers, and Monica's very effective at grants as well. So part of the project would be predicated on the fact that she gets the grants on the other side for that.
so, is there any other fee in lieu questions before I move on to the next thing? Oh, okay, moving on. The next thing I want to talk about that wasn't really highlighted in, because Kurt did such a great job highlighting kind of the bigger items in Park and Rec budget, is the pool. We did change the fees this year, so I did want to go over with you how that went. It did go fairly well. You know, to be expected, there's always a little bit of pain when you change the rates, but our projected numbers for this year, based on, you know, visiting the pool more than one time in a season, was 7,318. We ended up with 7,001 members this year. So we did fairly well. It was not that much of a deficit. And I think we can make up for that. We may be able to consider alternate fees. We had a healthy discussion about different opportunities for extra funding at the pool, or different opportunities for making money at the pool. So we're still evaluating that, and I'll be back to the board with that sometime soon. So I think for first year, my opinion is that it did go well. I'm getting a lot of feedback from people who did go to alternate pools and were disappointed with the amount of time they can get in at the pool, or the amenities that they didn't have, or they missed the special events. So we do have a number of people who are reporting that they plan to come back. You know, time will tell on the numbers for that, but I did want to bring it to your attention how it did go this year, and it did go very well. Ultimately, we are one of the only pools that operate at such a high level in the area this season. So that was very good as far as that goes. Another thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, you'll see that we boosted the fees in special events. One of the things, it's only $5,000 we're looking for this project, but with the Play for All plan, it was recognized that we needed more art in our parks. So I met with the artists of Yardley, and we came up with a project to infiltrate the parks with art in all different ways. So we reached out to the Grounds for Sculpture and Seward Johnson Altier to see if there's something that we could do to get some sculptures in our parks. And turns out there is. So with putting our brains together with Artists of Yardley, we put together a grant. Artists of Yardley did apply for this grant with Visit Bucks County in anticipation of us contributing $5,000, Artists of Yardley contributing $5,000 in a match grant to be able to get 8 to 10 sculptures within the parks. And then we would supplement with programming, which we could charge for, or we could offer some for free with the grant money. We could also do sponsorship and such to supplement some of that $5,000. But I did want to mention why that rate was increased for next year. We're looking to bring in theater, dance, everything as part of this program. In partnership, Artists of Yardley will help with art programming. It'll be a true community engagement and partnership program. So that is something that was included in the budget, not necessarily talked about at a board meeting, but has been in my board reports that I've been, sending the board. So that.
Monica, if I wasn't sick, I would run over there and hug you. That's great to hear. Thank you.
What page is that one on?
I want to say it's 25. This expenses. It is wrapped into special events. So it's 05 451 247. Sorry, It's off.
247, so that's under programs and events.
Yes,
So it's nested in there then.
it's nested in there, but I
Okay.
did want to draw it to your attention.
Okay.
Okay. And then Kurt covered really all of our other expenses. It was a rough year for us with trees and fuel. The fuel costs were much higher this year than anticipated. Our busing fees were a lot higher. It really did impact. We do plan to increase our camp fees next year all the way across the board just because that really hurt us this year. But other than that, those are kind of the big items.
Can I just draw your attention to a couple of things? Monica sort of glossed over her performance at the pool. The pool this year did not break even. However, it only required subsidy of about $14,000 in change from the Park and Rec Fund. So like what she's saying, in the end, right, there was a lot of draws on the Park and Rec Fund. I think she'll inevitably get the pool back to break even here. But there were a lot of nickel and dime draws on that fund, gas, trees, assistance to the pool, that all sort of collectively added up to pulling down that fund balance more than would have been anticipated. But as I pointed out to you before, we did pull down, as part of the budget discussions with Monica, the amount of money that's listed in the budget for trees, maintenance, essentially for Park and Rec. It's in your schedule that shows contracted services. That, you know, the recommendation was to, as I said at the beginning, was to move money from the rescue plan to help Derek and his budget with all the trees that they're dealing with, which is probably over $80,000 this year. And as Derek said to me, you can either budget for it, and we have it in there, or I'm going to be coming to the board talking about how we have to do them anyway. So that might be something you want to contemplate for Monica's budget as well.
And another thing that we did this year, a little different than before, was some of the contracted services. We get billed for them all together. And I'm sitting there trying to divide them between Park. We tried to merge some of those funds together. So this year you'll see that our capital fund, or our Fund 300 has been expanded, but in other sections it was reduced. So I just want you to, if you see that in the budget, that's something that it's worth considering, or just noting that we did that.
On the pool revenue, right? So we missed by like $100,000. So you said before we had more people. How many total members did we have?
This year,
Yeah.
7,001.
And how many did we have the prior year? Or-
Well, we had approximately 7,400. The number I worked with was 7,300 because approximately 100 of them have never visited the pool. So if they never visited the pool, I didn't count them in the head count as a potential.
Those are our most profitable customers. We love those
Well,
people.
not when they're a family membership,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
because they're paying a family membership, whether it's 5, 6, 7,
Yeah.
8, 9, 10. So I wanted to be realistic with the numbers that we were projecting. So I projected with about 7,318 specifically for when I was coming up with the numbers. It is very specific. One big, really cool thing that happened this year, and I actually did a little report that I didn't share with you yet, but I will, I promise. The seniors, senior users this year, we were only anticipating 498 seniors to sign up. We had 815 seniors that are local and 285 seniors who were non-residents. Which was a really cool thing, as they are identified in our program plan as an underserved population. So we were able to serve them differently, which was a really neat piece of the puzzle.
Monica, do you believe that part of that was the new fee structure that was an incentive?
Yeah, their fee was reduced, actually. So the senior fee was reduced.
Yeah, no, it's sort of a trade-off. The folks with large families, though, we probably lost some of those, of the 400 that we were expecting, you know, the 7,400 to 7,000, right? The senior, and again, that mix is fine. It's a question of, you know, it's hard sometimes on revenue to plan out how people's behavior will change when you change prices.
Right.
In this case, you changed the structure of the pricing pretty significantly. Some were fans, some were not, right? That's anytime you do that. So, but we think we're going to get better, we ended up doing more in revenue, about like 60,000 more than we did last year, right?
Yeah.
60, 70. Okay. We just didn't hit what we thought we were gonna hit on.
What we would have, yes, that's what we were hoping we would hit. Yeah.
Okay.
It's about 4%, what, 3-4%.
Yeah. Also capital expenditures on the pool. We have a number of them planned for this year. So the bathrooms, right? Finally get fixed.
Yep, that's the intention.
This is the question I always have to ask. Is there another area where we think is potentially a capital expenditure that you didn't put on this year, but you think will be coming next year?
There are 2 capital expenditures that I know will be coming up soon. We have another pool filter, not as big, because the one that we're getting this year,
Right.
double the size what we'll need for the other pool. And we do have to sandblast the pool in the next couple of years. Usually we just paint. We do need to sandblast and paint every so many years.
Yep. Okay.
So that's something that's coming up.
No other ones? And so the new filters, the old ones, we just replaced for 200,000, right?
Yeah.
Is this similar, less, much less?
Well, I'd like to say half because it's about half the size of
Okay.
the pool, but I'd have to have someone come in and give me an estimate.
Right, so think of 120, and you think that would be, say, in the 2024 budget then?
Potentially in the 2024 budget, yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
and then the sandblasting, that's a regular recurring event, right?
Yeah, every 5 to 10 years.
Every 5 to 10. When's our last?
Jim Majewski would be a better, it could have been longer.
It's been 5 years?
Yeah.
10, okay.
So we're heading into possibility of needing that.
Right, and the reason why I asked that is it's sort of like planning to reserves for that, like in much of the same we've talked about, dump trucks and other stuff, and having an amount set aside each year that says, we know this is coming, and making sure we're planning for it so we're not surprised that, when those events occur or anything like that. And then I have to ask a Columbo style, is there any other?
Well, I'll tell you, John, Derek and I have been working together on a capital improvement plan.
Mhm.
That's going to take us some time because we're trying to like touch and feel and really understand when we've got things and that stuff. So we'll probably have more information moving forward. Those are the 2 right off the top of my head for the pool that I can think of in the near future.
We think of ours,
Yeah.
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 And then on going through, there's nothing in here for snipes planning or engineering or anything for next year then? Just, okay, so that anybody who's in the audience, if there's anybody, not that there's anybody watching, I don't think at this hour, but then there's nothing in there for next year.
No, we were planning to do discussions, with staff.
Mhm.
But the one thing to consider that I haven't gotten a price for yet is the natural lands visit to Snipes. I don't think that'll be very much, but I do want to, if we do that natural land assessment, there will be a cost to it. It's not going to be for free.
Right, okay, but that's not in the budget right now then.
No.
Okay, cool. I think that's all I have.
Suzanne?
Good.
No.
Thank you.
Great. No problem.
You had it
Thank
easy.
Yeah, thank you. All my post-it.
Since she's getting up, I will say, with revenues being down on the pool, I think what Monica did very effectively was manage on the expense side, that gap only ended up being
Being
14,000.
yeah, as opposed to that's, yeah.
That's right.
Next department head who will present will be Derek Fuller, the Director of Public Works.
Guys. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, so I guess the few items that I'll touch on that we already discussed earlier would be the capital purchases. They're probably the biggest ones for the department, obviously for next year. Just wanted to take a look at my clip notes here. The main reasons we need to get some things on order, we're seeing that right now, that in this budget that prior to my arrival, you guys did order you guys did order a dump truck this year. It's still actually not here. And we have one that's actually got red tagged because it can't even pass inspection. So we're going into the winter months right now without a truck that we need, that we actually, so we kind of, we need to start shake the 8 ball a little bit and get this on order. So the 2 trucks we do want to replace are actually 21 and 22 years old now. So by the time we could get them in 2025 is what the vendors are saying. So we're almost 2 years out on a January order. So I do want to jump the ball, get those things rolling. If they do come in early, great. We have the funding for them. And then we can, you know, the trucks that are starting to nickel and dime us, we can get rid of them sooner. So they're the 2 big things. We do have a pickup truck also. Again, Chevy, Ford, you know, the way we spec trucks out, the books open for them usually in July right now. So even if I order it in July of this year, I may not see it until close to 2025, you know, the end of 2025. So I just want to start being proactive before we start getting more equipment down, and then we're in dire needs and we're kind of in a panic mode. So capital, they're the 3 big capital expenses. The other thing I am requesting to do is hire a new full-time associate, full-time labor, stationary labor. I believe we started for I believe May 1st. We're looking to do a May 1st hire. The main reason for that is twofold, threefold actually. The way I see the department now, the way it's shaped, we're a department about 15. Out of that 15, it's myself, an administrative assistant. So we're down to 13. I have 2 mechanics. We're down to 11. Facilities technician. That's the road crew. That's a full-time street sweeper all summer long. So I have about 7 guys at my disposal to fix potholes, repair issues during the main season. Another fun fact is out of those guys, you know, a lot of the guys have a lot of tenure. Out of 13 men, we have 26 years of experience on the average. And then out of 10 of those guys, there's 32 years average seniority age for that department, 32 years. So they get a lot of vacation and they have a lot of sick time. On average, the guys are taking about 30 days a year. You know, so if you kind of spread that out, I usually without 2 guys every day. That's just on planned sick days, planned vacation. So my 7-man crew that can go fix things is down to 4 or 5. So you can't get much done with 4 or 5 guys. Or what happens if we do take a larger project on, we just kind of did some patch paving last week. I have to take all my resources and stop everything else just to try to get things done. So I think it's critical to be proactive in the sense instead of reactive. The other thing too is I have about three guys nearing retirement age or at retirement age. Our contract is due this year. Depending on the results of that contract agreement, we'd have 3 guys that are immediately gone or within the next year gone. So I just want to start building the force up so we get started out training and getting the guy to understand things. They're my 2 big ticket items, I guess. With new hires.
How
Yeah.
about the snow plowing and how will that affect snow plowing?
Yeah, so obviously if we build the force up by 1, it's great because we do depend a lot on subcontractors for our snow plowing services. We typically bring in 3 or 4 contractors at 20 plows. We pay pretty good penny for 20 plows that be on the road. So obviously with 1 full-time hire, that's 1 less contractor we're paying at $120+ an hour. So, you know, that's a small snippet of an activity, but it helps. Leaf collection, again, it's less guys that have to bring in to supplement our forces with leaf collection. So it may seem like a large expenditure, but on the backside, if you think of the subcontractors and consultants, or not consultants, but people that we bring in to help us, we're going to reduce that pretty significantly. So I think that offsets it quite well.
Can I also get Derek to answer some questions? Is that okay, Chief? Sure. So a couple of the items in the budget that are sort of embedded in the number that you wouldn't see necessarily were items that Derek talked to me about. One of those items we're talking about, for example, for those who don't know, John likes
I can't hear you, Kurt. Can you bring the
John,
mic?
I was saying John likes new concepts when we bring these things out. So one of the things you talked about in your budget was an asphalt kettle.
Yes. So if you look under our, I believe, where do you have that minor equipment, Highway 430, 260 minor equipment. I did notice when I came here, there's a few, we have a pretty great fleet. You know, you guys did a great job getting things turned over. One of the more minor equipments is an asphalt kettle. The department does own one. It's from 1986 and it's inoperable. So when we did take on a road project, we paved East Ferry ourselves to do with an in-house crew. We actually had to turn around and pay someone to come in and do tack coat for us at a cost of $1,500 to do a little quarter-mile stretch. So, an asphalt kettle's running, I forget, I think it was about $15,000 we put in there. So on the long term, I just spent $1,500 of that $15,000. So the more patching, paving we can do in-house, it's kind of a critical piece of equipment to have in our crew and at our resource. Like I said, we have it, it's inoperable, we need to switch it out.
That minor equipment item, you'll see there's $38,000 budgeted. We've which is 260 in that account. If you've looked under highway and public works, there's been a placeholder every year for $14,000 or $15,000 for things that Derek would need, the department head would need. So there's $15,000 in there for an asphalt kettle. You have $8,000 you asked for a sweeper box. If
Yeah,
you would like to.
the other thing would be a sweeper box in there. Seeing how the operation goes, and it's not quite typical. Again, it's a smaller crew that we use. We obviously own a street sweeper. It's more of you call that a regenerative sweeper in the construction industry. It doesn't have mechanical brooms on the back. When you say JDM paving, they actually have a sweeper broom that helps pick up the millings and clean everything up. Ours is actually air suction. It has broom on the side, suction air. So when we do we have a milling head, when we can do all that, it's all mechanical and hand labor to get up the milling. Our sweeper does a decent job, but there is a detachment for a skid steer, like you said. It's a little broom box that you put on the front that actually has mechanical broom so you can pick those millings up, and it's less guys trying to shovel and backhoe damaging things. So yeah, it's another small piece that would just, again, help build these roads and do these little patch jobs to try to get this road program in a better shape than it is doing more in-house work.
Some of those roads though as well, you've provided the 3-year road paving plan that you said this year. You've updated the numbers. You also put with the understanding, at least, that if the board goes through with the road loan program that we started this year, that would be now in 2025. And so you've updated those numbers, I believe, especially for like this year, looking at current pricing. It's one of the reasons that the recommendation came forward to provide $50,000 from the rescue plan to stay on that plan, because we're anticipating those costs would go up.
Correct. Yeah, that's a big thing. I took a look at the numbers that we paid this year, and actually we probably had better pricing this year because it's such a large paving program. So I did adjust the 2023 plan with the more revised numbers with inflation. They're in there. And then again, I did project reasonably what 2024 is. And then again, looking if the board so chooses, supervisors so choose to in 2025 take that loan out again, a 2025 MS mega program at $2.2 million. This is a great start. Like you said, everything was great. I do think eventually more funding needs to be dumped in the road program. We're probably about $4 or $5 million short of where we need to be right now. But again, that's something at a later time to discuss. This just keeps us on the track that was started.
4 or 5 million one time or every year?
$1 million question. What's scary is I started doing this, and then I started looking at roads that would be in 2016, and I had $5 million worth of roads that need to still be done in the next 4 or 5 years. So the 3-year program is great. It's a great model for a 25-year replacement on every mile of road you do. We have about 140 miles, but when you have roads that are 1986, you got to dump the money in eventually to get them up to the standard. So it's
Along those lines, how much are we going to be able to do in-house on road work now? Because there might be an opportunity, pardon me, I don't know if you can hear me. Yeah, I was going to say, it may be an opportunity to think about the structure of the road program and the kinds of roads that perhaps we can do in-house that don't require full depth reclamation, that you can, fix and, seal, and see if that would extend the life of existing roads that, maybe 86, but they're not structurally broken down, or they don't get the same level of traffic.
And that's the goal with getting a new, younger, more, we probably could use a couple more labors, to be honest with you, to take on a test like that. But we did that recently just in Upton. It was a road that wasn't even planned. And Highland had a couple bad intersections. But after we looked at the next 4 or 5 years, that road may not be touched for 4 or 5 years. We knew it's going to fall apart maybe this winter, next winter. So we did quickly go up there. We did just a mill and patch, we call it. You take the center line out, which is the worst, and we had it fixed within a day. So we did, I forget how many tons we laid, but again, if you wanted to take on a full reclamation, yeah, it's a much larger project, but we can do these small mill and patch jobs with the equipment that I need to get purchased to revise the ones that aren't working, but you could do more of that.
So and this is something for you to think about in terms of the breakout between the stuff that you would have external parties do and the stuff that we internally could do insourced. in-house to get us more road faster, right? Is that, that's sort of that trade-off. If we invest more on existing folks and equipment, does that yield, a better outcome for us?
Yeah, I did start looking at that. The investment would be pretty large, to be honest with you. Just for the manpower, because a normal paving operation is anywhere from a 6 to 9 man crew for paving.
Okay.
And then you need your triaxles to haul the asphalt. There's 3, 4 drivers right there just bringing asphalt nonstop. Then you have a large paver that then you're renting that. So if you take your whole public works crew and do that, it's a great model. Nothing else gets done, for that 2-month period. So it's possibility. I know a couple other towns do that philosophy. Looking at the price models, I kind of compared, we did a 1/4 mile on East Ferry, I believe it was. We weren't that far off from what we paid a contractor to do it, believe it or not. If I looked at our internal rates and kind of modified them with all the burden and fringes, we're kind of right there, believe it or not.
So then isn't that,
It's not that far off.
Okay.
Because those guys are in the business of laying asphalt, and that's what they do. They're fast, they're efficient. So it's maybe long-term if we're doing, 5, 6, 7 miles in-house, but, doing a couple miles per the way this road program is. Me personally, at this point in time, I don't think it's there.
What Greg was contemplating before, John, was similar to what Derek is talking about, where
Yeah.
if you're using a 25-year model, Greg was talking about a 20-year blended model, which would be 6.9 miles a year, blended over time. Some roads, dead end cul-de-sacs might be every 30 years, others might be every 10 or 12. I think what Greg was contemplating in that model where he was talking of over time was maybe 2 or 3 tenths of a mile a year in-house to pick off some stuff here or there, the way Derek talked about. So the road plan that was outlined before with that 3-year plan, right? Typically, we've done liquid fuels, which is 700,000 or so. Do you know what the mileage was for that next year?
Next year, 2023, I
Yeah.
got 3 miles.
So 3 miles, right? And then if you're talking 2024, 3 miles or so, the loan program allows you at least to ramp that up. I think this year's program, you added some rescue plan money, was more like 11 miles or so. So when you average that over time, you're getting closer. You're at least making it up. You didn't bring up to me, you wanted 5 million, but I will leave that for you.
It's a lot of hand. I think the other thing to think about too, that is a large cost. It's not just us paving, or it's not just the contractors, things paving the road. We have to do the ADA upgrades for the intersection. So it does take a big chunk. So you see this year's 3 miles, next year's actually 2 miles for the same cost, because whatever, I forget what development is, has a lot of ramps in it, has a lot of curb ramps, versus if you pick a neighborhood that doesn't have curbs and curb ramps, it's a cheaper paved project. You can actually get more miles out.
And if I'm not mistaken, when you pave those roads that have those, you're obligated to upgrade those ramps. It's not like something you can opt off.
On the truck purchases, and I'm supportive of purchasing in advance because we don't know where we're going to be on the supply chain. I'm hoping for a warm winter. I used to like snow, but I don't now. But if we're down some trucks, are we at risk, or do we need to worry at all if we have major snow events?
In terms of this winter, I would say no. We're actually in decent shape. We have a fleet of a couple spares that we usually keep for that reason.
Okay,
It's not a large size one that we have, this is the truck that we're replacing is more of a 6-wheel size, large body, large salt capabilities. We do have a spare like 301 that's a little smaller, but it could still handle the same thing. And again, that's where we have the contractors lean on to it. We need a little more support.
the one area that we get nicked on the winter is the cul-de-sacs, because we have a problem with trying to plow them and where to put the snow. That's where I always worry, because people get stuck and then we get calls, and that's,
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to make a point to you about
Yeah.
ordering them early. One of those trucks that's being recommended is a 10-wheel that Derek has asked for, that would come from the rescue plan.
okay.
Again, so bear with me when I say this. The other ones would be coming from road machinery. So the differentiation I make for that is the budget would need to be approved for the ones from road machinery because it's being paid for by tax dollars.
Right.
If you all were so inclined, you could approve at your leisure the 10-wheel dump truck from the rescue plan money, because that is not tax dollars. That was relief money.
Yeah.
So you could still actually put it in the 2023 budget. But if you were so inclined to tell Derek going forward, we'll approve that in one of our future meetings to get a 1 month jump on it, you could do that.
But, or just, we could put it in now as relief money.
I-
right?
Yes, I'm saying you would still list it in the
Yeah.
2020, but you would not be mandated to wait for the budget to pass to do that particular piece.
Okay, so if he were to get it tomorrow, he could,
Of course he could.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
You would need to make a motion.
yep, yeah. I would be okay with that. Quick leaf collection. Where are we just for, because
We're struggling, I'll be honest with you. We're
Mhm.
about a week behind.
Okay.
And the reason for that was my choice to do this emergency paving up in Upton. When we saw what kind of was going on up there, we wanted to hit that with the crew and get a couple of those critical areas done because we thought it was going to blow apart on us over this winter. So we did do that. And then what takes time too is we did have a contractor out last week, and then we actually again, I'm a little new at this, I apologize, but
No worries.
the crews, what they do to be proactive is we actually get our trucks ready for salt season.
Right,
So actually, if you see our trucks running around, they have all the salt boxes on the back ready to go. So the reason for that is if we do have a sneak up storm, we could drop the leaf truck and we're out salting. So we did spend last week getting the trucks ready for salt season. Obviously the plows aren't on, but we are out. We're about, I would say about 4 days behind where we should be right now. We're actually going to be out tomorrow collecting leaves to try to get caught back up to where we should. be.
Okay.
So we're there. We're a little bit behind, but to be honest, what I'm noticing too, looking at the historic data that Greg would kind of keep, the tonnage is actually a lot more impressive that we're actually getting out of this lower end. So believe it or not, waiting a week, we're actually collecting more. So what I think is going to happen is going to be a little swing. We're actually collecting more on the southern end of this township right now. And as we go north, we're going to be collecting more the first round than we typically see. And then the second round is almost a cleanup round, where the first round, the first 2 weeks, we see the guys come back with not a lot of tons, or they're just getting a lot of road miles, but not collecting a lot. So we're actually collecting more. I'm just curious to see how it ends. I think one on time, but it's just interesting to see we're much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Efficient. We're almost more efficient at it, just waiting a week. you
It'll
know?
end well if it doesn't snow.
Well, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
that's,
Yeah, I mean,
It's when
yeah,
they freeze. It's
when they
it's-
freeze, we're the problem, but
Yeah.
seeing how much more efficient it is right now is actually pretty interesting. you know?
yeah, no, that's, and I'm, because I'm always late to raking them myself, so I don't. The worst is when I know the truck is coming and I'm like behind. So
It's always 2 rounds. We'll be back. twice.
I know. The suggestion I would make when we have these is, we could also do a communications program on email to tell people, hey, this is the map, your zone X, right? Because everybody's got to remember, I think I'm 25 or 26, so I'm late in the game, which I'm fine, I'm in favor of for me, but just to kind of keep people up to speed so they know, what's coming. The other thing too for on the communication side is how to make the leaves easiest for you to collect, right?
And the 2 things you're bringing up is actually 2 things that I kind of saw coming. The communication thing. I mean, because to be honest with you, we have internal maps for every zone that we send a truck out to. So it would be nice if we don't want to give you guys an exact date because everything's fluid, but yeah, I think we could get a little bit better. Hey, this truck's going to be coming, in the next day or so. That's something that I want to work towards. And I think it's a goal.
Have we stored, because we have 8,000 households, right, on email, right? Do we have those tied to a postal address with those people? Okay. Because we could zone them out and you could say, hey, I'm coming to your neck of the woods this week. Get your leaves out. Okay, so we need to think about that possibly in the future for communications. I hate to hit your policy stuff on a budget meeting.
No,
But I'm
no, I like
I'm there on all the.
you're bringing up something else that eventually is a goal of mine is that software that the department lacks in software in terms of asset management, like Monica kind of touched on. We're a little antiquated. There's not much down there in terms of software. So there, the department spent money a long time ago to inventory like street signs. It was a requirement back then. Between street signs and street lights, that's it. That's all that's kind of inventoried and modeled in GIS. What I would like to see in the future is spend some money in a software program to model. You could have your leaf program in there, so it would all be automated. They know when you're doing that zone. It could be email blasted out to those residents, but again, it's a cost. It's something to look towards the future to start watching these things and better plan capital expenses.
On the strategy along those lines with the asset management, is it a situation where is it just the stuff that's outside Or is it internal machinery that you need to track that you don't have the tools for?
Equipment vehicles we're good on.
Okay.
I would be more impressed with, the building side of machinery. You know, we do not have anything tracking the air handler units, anything like that. That stuff should be documented. We should have systems in place to kind of keep track of repairs. I mean, we have what methods and ways, Excel sheets, but,
How much money do we have left in the
With the suggestion I made tonight that we need to add 195,000, that would make you'd have around 400,000 left unaccounted for next year, if you took the recommendations as they were.
So if Public Works needed, say, $75,000 to upgrade their IT systems, we could use.
Sure, of course. No, of course you could. And then the question's gonna be, I think, the other part of that then is just like the OpenGov software. You're gonna get the software, then there's gonna be an annual recurring cost of that you would be incorporating as well. So it would cover the initial cost, then you would just have to absorb whatever that annual cost
yeah,
would be.
absolutely. And that's that's something that just need to be planned long-term. You're right.
If we don't significantly change things in 25, when we have that millage going away, if we can reallocate some of that millage to Public Works and
All alternatives.
all alternatives we have, all choices we can make. So just a thought.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
The one thing I would suggest on that is this brings into a larger software data strategy question based on what we learned in April. We need to have a comprehensive data strategy for the entire organization. Where's all the data stores that we have? How do they integrate together so that, for example, using the email list to contact people based on zone is not hard. It's easy to do. The OpenGov software, which hopefully is implemented or near implementation now, that has storage associated. How do we use that so that can be applied in different ways? That if we think about that collectively across the entire township, that could save us a lot of money and hassle by reusing and not storing data in multiple places where it's at risk and not having stuff in paper, which is still a problem. So
That definitely could be a project for next year. And we could allocate a portion.
relief funds for that, yeah.
And I'm just gonna make the same point, even if you did budget for that, because it is relief money, if you came up with a plan in May and you have $400,000 sitting there, that's for whatever you don't, as long as you make a motion, observe bidding procedures for those sorts of things, that money is yours to choose from whatever you like.
Yeah, but before even that process, there should be a staff sort of figuring out where do we have data?
No, that
stored?
would be the first step.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So Derek, I love the way you're thinking about,
It is done. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Hey, thanks. I love the way that you're thinking as you go through your first round of the lease, right? What might we be able to restructure differently next year? We had been hearing lately that the leaves are staying on the trees longer. And so this fortuitous event is probably inuring to the benefit. But as you know, your colleagues on either side of you joked around, as long as we don't get snow, right? We've had early snow twice since I've been on the board, and then that's a whole other monkey wrench. So maybe there is something that we learned from this year where we can do our employees and the contractors and stagger them in such a way that we can really react to what's going on with Mother Nature. So good job.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And to Chief's point, on Edgewood, right? Edgewood, yeah, it did get complete today. Yeah, the microsurfacing got done. So it's a good thing.
So you're talking about the added skid protection,
Good surfacing, yes.
right? That was part of that traffic calming. Thank you. Great.
Thank you, guys.
If there's no other comments, we can move on. That's it.
Great, thank you.
Our fire services, Tim Chamberlain.
Gentlemen.
So if you're looking at the budget there, I just want to remind you all, much to Tim's call to me as I put the original round of the budget out, we did add those items in there on expenses and revenue for inspections. That I will make sure that I would, if the board is okay with that, add that in prior to the budget going out on Friday. If the budget is, preliminary budget is next Wednesday, right, for your regular meeting, we can make those changes and those additions without any implications of anything, because this is all essentially informal at this point that we would do that. There you go.
So working with Kurt and the chief, being I really had no structured budget for myself. Comparing some other municipalities, knowing what I worked with in past jobs and stuff, I put together a budget that we can start working towards getting equipment, materials in our department, in our township, that serves me and the community for the best. So I guess first thing is you want to talk about the relief?
Yeah, I'm gonna have you talk about that. So in the end, as you'll know, so you're gonna bear with me. I'm gonna set you up here to do really well. One of the items that Tim was tasked with was this idea that as partners with a volunteer company, they would undertake certain capital expenditures. Tim would be, I'll say, a facilitator to give input regarding the timing of those purchases, with the idea that as the director here, he would come back. There's this rescue pot of money that he's talked to me about, that the township would participate with the volunteers, where he could be that filter for all of you to say, they've spent on these things. We know we're going to need this item. We have this item for what do you call that again? Air bottle charger.
For our SCBA. filling
Yeah.
station.
Okay. There you go. Okay. Remember, you have to talk to people that don't know all your acronyms. So there is an item in there that Tim has recommended in working in with conjunction with the volunteer company for these filling stations. And they themselves have undertaken significant capital expenses over the last couple of years that Tim talked about as well. That's probably the big item sitting there that he believes really would serve the volunteers starting next year to get that. So do you want to talk about that a bit?
Sure. So just a brief, some of our capital expenditures that the fire company did was we did replace our SCBA. We had to buy 49 packs. Once they're 15 years old, we got to replace them. So that was $374,000 we had to put out right at COVID time. We also replaced our ladder truck, which is 1.2 million. An apparatus today now is anywhere from 24 to 36 months make, and the cost is going up almost 50 to 60%. So we had to fix our curbs and sidewalks for about 31,000, all new HVAC units at the one firehouse. We had to replace our generator out at the Woodside Station across from Caffrey's. We had the original generator there since '86. So we're working on that now. That was 99,000. All our garage doors, the controls went, and we just replaced our engine out at the Woodside Station for 920. And just to give you guys another example, they went out in June and signed the paperwork for that print approval. And then they turned around and signed the paperwork to replace our engine out of the Borough Station, which is identical to the truck this one here. And the cost went up to 970,000 in 6 months. And they told us it's going to go up another 40,000 by the end of this year. So that's why we signed for that one then. And that's going to take 2 years to get built. So we have to keep foreseeing in the future and trying to plan and save the best money we can. Now, we do get good return on our apparatus, thank God. But we did take a lot of hit on a lot of this stuff that needed to be done. But we also see some other items coming up, such as our floor in the firehouse. We have some drainage issues with our sewer. So we're going to repair that. We got quotes anywhere between 90 and 100,000 to repair that. So like Kurt said, I'm just trying to look and see if we can offset some of this stuff to take, the burden off the budget of the volunteers. So.
Can you talk about what that item is in the rescue plan for the
So when we purchased our old packs that we just replaced, they were bought in 2006. We replaced our air filling stations at each firehouse. So when we come back from any incidents, anytime we use our SCBA cylinders, we can refill them. It saves time. We don't have to run anywhere.
We bought them back in 2005, right before our new packs came in. Now they're almost 18 years old. Trying to get parts for them are pretty obsolete. And we were told that if we, one or two parts away from being out of service. So we're very concerned with that. Not saying that they don't work now, but if something breaks, we could be down to one. And then that could put a burden on filling them. So that's what we're looking to try to
Can you
replace that.
explain to them, literally, you're taking what they're doing, they're literally taking the air that they have that needs to be refilled, and they're literally taking it back to the station.
So anytime there's any hazardous atmosphere, fires, car fires, anything like that, anything that we shouldn't breathe any of the air, we have to wear SCBA cylinders. When we come back, these filling stations go through a big compressor, air filtration, moisture. It's tested quarterly just to ensure that the air that is in our cylinders that we are breathing is clean and will not, correct. Yes. So that's why these machines are so expensive. So.
The other item, we had some other items put in there. I mean, as Tim's going to talk to you about soon, he's managing the inspection program. There's going to be a discussion when it comes to fees as far as what, where those fees are. Tim's done a very good job, even from when he was, he was doing inspections before he came on here full time regarding collections and tracking who has their inspections. So part of this as well is going to be to enhance that program. But part of what's in there, and John, I know this is of particular interest to you, and it's why I wanted to make sure I gave you the slide, is there is not an inconsequential amount. I think it's $10,000 for volunteer recruitment, which is one of the things that you all have tasked Tim with on top of managing all of these other things. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So with that, the volunteer fire company put out almost $11,000 for recruitment material, the postcards, the banners, the other things that we put out. It has been very successful. We just had 4 firefighters complete fire school. They actually graduate in December, and we have 5 more attending in January. We had about 4 come in with our previous experience, and we had about 5 join as fire police. So our fire police force is up to about 10 now, which is very good. Now, as I reiterated to a lot of people, I won't see what kind of benefit I have with these until a year out, just to see once they get through fire school. They're very active now, but once that's over, I want to see how they blend in. So far, it's been great. The recruitment and retention committee's done a great job with getting stuff out there, training them, keeping them involved. So it's been working well, and I want to continue that. And that's why I put that category in there, so we can kind of help take the burden of that to send out the postcards. The postcards go to all the residents. And like I said, it's been very useful. So I want to continue that in the future. So that's where that came from.
Of the 11,000 spent, how many folks did we recruit total?
About 15.
15.
Yes.
And we think we'll net how many, you think?
If I can net half of them, that
Right,
would be awesome.
right. So
Yeah.
that's our cost per acquired volunteer at about, I don't know,
Now-
1,500 then.
We've gotten more in,
Mhm.
but as they saw the requirements,
Yep, yeah.
dedication, and which is fine with us.
Yeah, yeah,
I'd rather
you
have
wanna-
that than-
yep, yeah, yeah.
than drag them through. So we've, out of everything with the postcards, the banners and stuff like that, we probably, I think it was around 30 inquiries,
Okay,
and 18 of them actually joined.
right.
We lost a couple through fire school because of time commitments, and they realized it's not right time for them. And we said, that's fine. You can come back when you're ready. But like I said, 18, and if we can retain half of them, that would be tremendous.
What's our volunteer gap then post that? Because I know we had a gap where we were behind where we needed.
It's still because I'm still getting retirees. My 60, 70-year-olds are wearing out. So hopefully these new members that are coming in, which aren't young, they are 30s and 40s, and they some have families, so understandable. Hopefully they fill the gap with that, getting up at night, so I don't have to keep relying on my 80-year-old driver.
Yeah.
So I had 2 retire over this past year. So hopefully these 4 that are coming out of fire school will fill those 2 gaps and add 2 more for us.
Right.
And then these 5, hopefully that finish totally in January to, it goes till May. They can be an additional 5. So
So if we think about this as an ongoing program that every year we're recruiting, likely we'll be in a situation 3-4 years from now, we feel hopefully we can hedge the gap or.
we can fill the gap. And at that point, we can look at different ways of filling if there are gaps. Having different ways of filling those gaps of either overnight stays with the volunteers with better incentives, or something like that. So we can kind of entice them more. What's really a struggle a lot of times is affording the area. A lot of them can't afford the area to stay in. So we'll get them in, especially the younger crowd. And they go to college or they go away to school. And then they don't want to live home with mom and dad. They want to go out and we lose them. And a lot of times they can't even come back once they get jobs.
Yeah.
So it's tough. But like I said, from what we've been doing, from what the committee has been doing and with the help from myself, it's been doing very well and we're very happy with it. So
Yeah, because the metrics that we're concerned would be, first, we make sure we have enough folks.
Mhm.
And then we know we have an average age problem. So if we can lower that average age problem, we'll be in better shape. Because this is not an issue that's Lower Makefield's alone, because every other municipality in Bucks is having the same problem. We can't even get 9/11 dispatchers. We're having a hard time. And that's a very difficult job, but it can pay relatively well. So.
and the tough part with the volunteer fire service is we don't know when we're going to need them.
Yeah.
You're always constantly kind of like on the edge. And you ask anybody that's been in the fire service, it's like, we could be eating dinner, we could be here, we could be wherever, and you can get called. And unfortunately, in today's day and age, people aren't as flexible as they used to be just because how busy their lives are with kids and sports and everything like that. So there's the dedication from our guys and girls they're there, but the time commitment is tough right now.
Tim, also, I mean, John, I think to address your point that a lot of other managers regionally are talking about is even if you do fill those gaps in those tough hours like nighttime, there are some hours, especially if you attract the younger guys and their girls that are local, they may be totally unavailable from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. regardless of their commitment because they're working. And that gap is always going to be the hard part to fill. Even if you get 30 new people, you may have such limited numbers during those times. That's why you have to push at it as hard as you do. Yeah.
So.
Other than that, I will say, I think going forward, it's not in this year's budget, but I want to talk about this for Tim is, I think going forward, there's going to be other revenue sources. We'll be looking at the fire millage is supported, the fire fund is supported by 1.1 mils. You do have other items in there that Tim has requested, which was a slight increase to the Yardley Makefield Company, a slight increase to the Morrisville Company to assist them with their service. And in the end, he is looking, in the end, he helps with reviews when development comes in, would be moving forward. It's not in this year's budget, would be to split that out and have part of Tim's review go into the fire fund that when we collect that fee would help support all of these services, the department, the volunteers, the volunteer recruitment, what have you.
The only thing that I just want to make myself clear on for the Tahoe. So I know it's coming out of the fire fund.
Yeah.
Are we using enterprise or are we just buying it?
I think I will defer to the chief on that. I think so let's talk about this. I have used an interest rate for that of 5.5%, understanding where things are. So in the end, if it would be the determination of the chief, Tim, of the new manager, that whatever we believe is the way that facilitates getting that and financing that would be, I'm sure they would be available to do that if they could get a Tahoe. And Tahoes are not easy to get right now. So yeah, so the dollar amounts in there at 5.5% over 3 years. And so you have some flexibility in there with what you want to do.
So the answer.
Okay.
Sorry.
We have options. Any questions for Tim? Any other questions? Thank you, Tim.
Good. All right. Thank you.
And we'll go from Tim to Jim. Jim Majewski from Community Development.
Good evening.
Wow, that sounded.
Good evening. Or formal. That's my manly voice.
So something you'll notice in the fund this year is obviously Jim and the department worked to have OpenGov added. One of the new expenses in the fund that is this year is that ongoing expense that would be in contracted services that essentially comes out to like $1 a resident or so that would be in that fund going forward. This past year, as you know, we added a planner to the department to assist Jim to not work 140 hours a week. Probably still do that though, but so you have that position in there. That's all of those positions are still in the fund. I think Jim can talk about, you'll see inspection fees this year are substantially higher, but it would be planned because we have projects underway. We've collected a lot. I think that the imbalance that you'll see is you're going to see a lot of that revenue that Jim has pointed out came in this year, and the costs on the inspections on the other side of that are listed at $360,000 would be the reason that would be heightened so much. So Jim, I'll give it to you from there, but anything with OpenGov or whatever you want to talk about, it's all yours.
Sure. This year we've had a record year so far in revenue for our building permits. We're up probably almost 50% above what we had budgeted. We had a large number of projects. The Prickett Reserve project came in. We've issued permits for the Wegmans, for the apartment buildings. We've also had a large number of continuing on from last year and the year before, home improvement projects that are continuing on in the township. So our revenues this year are very strong. Our expenses are up because there's more work being conducted by our people and also by our consultants to keep up with all those extra inspections. In the coming year, that'll sort of balance out a little bit more because we are collecting a lot of the money this year, but the inspections are going to be next year. So our sort of running totals are going to balance out a little bit more this year. Our OpenGov software, we're going through the configuration and testing process, and I hope to have that up and running at the beginning of the year or shortly thereafter. And basically, that's going to be a portal that citizens can use to interact with the township on all sorts of things. Every permit we have, for the most part, is going to be on there, except for, I think, police stuff for right now, just because of, security. People will be able to put in right to know requests for informations online through the portal. They'll be able to ask questions, get information, and do all sorts of stuff. And it'll allow us to assign those tasks to people who are available to do the work. Also set alarms for us on when things are due to keep us more on task, so things are less likely to slip through the cracks, which they often do when you have a couple of thousand permits a year. We'll be collecting the monies automatically through the system, so we'll have a lot less of checks to copy, fill out paperwork. So it'll be an electronic system that I think will be beneficial to all the residents and also to our staff time, and provide a better reporting and tracking mechanism for all of our processes.
Any questions from the board?
So the only capital improvement we have is what, less than $5,000? Large format plotter printer, 2 laptops.
That's about all we need. Since we are going more electronic,
Yeah.
we don't have a large need for things.
Yep.
We did get a vehicle a couple of years ago, and that's still fairly new. So
Mike's
that's,
on
yeah, it's if you ever saw the old car, you'd understand why. But it's great for carrying stuff, picking up signs that we go around and pick up all the time. If you see my car, you'll often see signs in the back seat that I pick up.
Or dense.
a lot of Denson cars that I drive. And so, basically, since we're pretty much computerized and getting computerized, the expenses now are just computer style equipment.
Do you mind if I ask a question that might?
Sure.
Can you talk at all, in the last couple years, we replaced the building inspections company to the firm that we have now. And at least from the time that I saw, I think we were fairly satisfied that they were responsive, getting back to people, managed their time well. For the most part, you felt that the bills were fair, that you review every month, you and Mike. Any thoughts as far as the company goes, as far as coming into all these big projects that are happening, and how you feel about how they're doing?
Oh, I think they're doing a fine job. Although they have had such a large volume of permits and large scale permits that the time for processing has just been elongated a little bit, just for the sheer volume of work involved. But I think we're still getting good service for a fair price. Next year, it'll be a lot of inspection work. This year was a lot of plan review stuff. So it'll all balance out pretty well.
Do we anticipate any very large development coming to the township in the next year or so that we should plan for and say, hey, we've got a large development project coming?
There are none currently in the pipeline. Any projects that would come online are 1 lot to 5 lot subdivisions, nothing of major consequence. Although people are finding every last piece of land that's out there and finding little odd building lots that have been around forever that, maybe are in some people's mind less than desirable. However, when you're looking for a house, a lot that's maybe not in the optimal location for some people is someone else's slice of heaven.
Along those lines, I know there's another project that is coming. For those who I missed the public portion of our meeting last week, but there was some discussion about middle school redevelopment, one of the middle schools, Bain.
Yes,
And there was discussion of the permits, right?
correct.
Okay, and our hope is that we wouldn't want to concede or lose any money there in that process. I mean, we did generously came to a reasonable conclusion. I believe, Chief, you were there for the browbeating. Yeah. So if I could just suggest policy wise that maybe we state our original plan that at a minimum captures our total costs, both loaded and unloaded.
Okay. But yeah, and this is something that we had discussed, and I know the last round, we actually gave Pennsbury a great bargain on the permit fee. I thought it was in some ways maybe a little bit unfair to the township. And so I think I proposed something that was a little more equitable to the school district that would give them what is a common break to most municipalities give to a school district, about a 30 to 35% cut in the building permit fee. Understanding that public projects, the prices are higher. And since a lot of the fees are geared towards the costs, since the costs are higher, the fees are higher. So lowering it doesn't necessarily jeopardize our ability to cover all of our costs on these projects.
If I could also add, that has been generally established. So for example, when I was in Newtown, Council Rock North and South, we're updating both of their middle schools, and we worked together with the superintendent at the time. And I don't, only because we have a lawyer here that I will say is that it has been litigated in the courts regarding townships not overcharging school districts, that the generally understood amount that would be accepted is 70%. A lot of times school districts will want to put the burden on Jim to say, well, just track every hour, every half an hour that your administrative staff, it becomes incredibly burdensome. And that 70% is widely accepted by the courts and in previous projects to be a fair assessment. And there's local examples, at least a half a dozen that have done that as well, that if that needed to be supplied, Jim, as far as backup for that could be done.
Yeah, because there's a potential that would have some budget impact in terms of our revenue and expense side for this year. It would be this year or next year for BAME?
Well, I think we're looking to issue the permit in this year for work to start next year.
Okay,
So we'd have the revenue this year, but we'd have the expense for everything next year. And that's why if you look at the prior years where we're running a little ahead of the game, next year it's closer to even because of that.
yep, yeah. And Supervisor Weiss and Supervisor Blendy, I ask these questions because I seek to save you phone calls from school board members who wish to aggressively lobby their case. So I just wanted to bring that.
I think we have a fair, I think we have a fair fee schedule for the school district from what I've heard. So I'm not too concerned about it. I know you keep up on that.
Yeah, and I know at the last meeting, it was discussed. I think you were not there.
No, I had
Yeah,
to,
Yeah.
We asked the question, we got an answer, and
Yeah, and I think we're a little bit more comfortable now. I know the question came up, well, does Pennsbury give, or does anyone else give Pennsbury a little bit of a break? And the answer was yes. I was pretty sure that was the answer, but I didn't want to stick my neck out to be chopped off. Thank you.
One more to go. Will the police, just a follow up on Tim's Tahoe, we had to defer 3 Tahoes, marked police cars to 2023 because we couldn't get them. Yeah, and by the time they came in and then the leasing cost and then the upfitting and all that stuff, we deferred it. So police budget's pretty uneventful. If you look at the page 10, the difference from this year to 2023 budgets going to consist of obviously personnel and salaries. It's also all other reoccurring benefits tied into that, and a double in gas cost this year. The good part is that we're not asking for any additional officers. Don't anticipate asking for any additional. We still have our 1 officer that's injured, and we have our 1 officer who's deployed to peacekeeping mission in Qatar, I believe. So that's about an 18-month deployment. So that's kind of rough in our staffing. But and then moving forward, as far as revenues, we were fortunate enough to get a Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency grant in the amount of $21,200. And that is for our body cameras, to supplement our body cameras, and also for police training. And we also received a grant from the Federal Railroad Administration, the amount of $40,000. And that would be to patrol railroad tracks, crossings, and any suspicious activity and terrorism on the railroad. So that's really about it. As far as our, and no additional overtime hours are requested. If you see a little bump in the cost of overtime, that's just the hours and the same hours as last year, but the increase in the salary bumped that up. And I believe that's it.
so these figures basically represent the current contract.
They represent the contract that you just approved, yes. Okay,
Can I?
what's that, Greg?
So I want you all to be aware of an item that I do have in that police budget based upon the initial discussion we had regarding pension parity, would have a provision in there for, first, I think you all are going to be discussing in the future here, the pension contribution of command staff, understanding the change for overtime that went in. So there is a 3% provision in that salary amount, if agreeable by the board, for the current command staff to offset in the short term. We talked about in the short term, they would not really going to get the long-term benefit of a decreased pension contribution or the benefit by the time they retire. So there is a 3% extra provision in there for one time, yes, for command staff. So I don't know if there's questions about that, but that number is now in there. If you've noticed the previous budget, you got in the current one that was tweaked up a little bit.
Go ahead. And you'll also be talking about the ordinance change for the pension at our next public meeting. And that will include the new contract terms, and will also include a cap of 2% for commanders' contribution to pensions.
Chief?
Yes.
Forgive me for forgetting the important thing here, but in terms of the opioid litigation, I don't know if we ever were able to recover anything, and if any of that money has been able to be put into your budget for.
No, we have nothing in our budget for that. We do have a recovery. I do not know if that money hit finance yet. Has not. You're shaking your head.
No, I was,
Okay.
no, I
Oh,
don't,
okay.
I don't think that it has.
I don't think that it has either. And I'll have to follow up with Dave Truelove to see when that's expected.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So just going through of all the changes in the budget, it's mostly personnel and benefits. That's all contracted services.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and you'll see that most of the other line items remain the
Are
same.
flat.
Very different.
Yeah, we're talking very de minimis changes.
Yeah.
So, but for those who are at home, who are wondering, total investment in police services increasing
Mhm.
largely because we're paying officers as related to our contract.
That's correct.
Total number of officers flat, although over the last couple of years, we've increased total officers. Equipment, we've invested significantly on that as well.
Yes.
So the reason I ask this question is a lot of people are particularly more attuned to police investment.
Mhm.
And it's important to remind folks that the board has made those investments over the last couple of years so that we're in a better shape now.
Well, that's completely correct, and I agree with that. And I appreciate the board's support over the years in keeping public safety where it should be here in Lower Makefield Township. So anytime I get a chance to thank the board for that, I will, and I appreciate that. And as I said, we don't anticipate any additional this year, but I know that last year we didn't anticipate either. And then we had injuries and we had lost. So the board came through and we had an additional officer last year, and I respect and appreciate that.
One last question. I know have we done the full transition to enterprise for the leasing of the cars?
We've done the full transition, but we're not, and I want to stress too, with the enterprise deal, we're not obligated to do that. As a matter of fact, there was a case this year where we bought a car outright because we were not able to take advantage of the CoStar's discount, which was pretty substantial, $7,500. So I made the decision not to go through enterprise and to buy the car outright. So it was an expense we didn't anticipate because we figured it would be a lot less if we leased it. However, it's a savings. And I think out of respect for the township and the taxpayers, we can't just let $7,500 go on a vehicle. So that's the advantage and the option to have with enterprise. And I said to you earlier, we haven't made the decision yet on Tim's car. We'll see. We'll see if the financing price and the leasing price cost of the vehicle. We'll weigh that out and we'll make the best decision for the taxpayers. Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, we've heard from every department, and unless there's further comment from the board, I'll open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment? Public comment? Okay. So the preliminary budget, it will be considered next on Wednesday. And of course, we'll probably revisit some of these things on Wednesday. However, if there's no other comment and no other business before the board.
So the version we'll get for Wednesday will have all the stuff we've covered today, right? So that changes will all be included.
The slides that I showed you, right,
Yeah.
we'll have those updates. I'll make sure that the chief gets that tomorrow. That will be reprinted, resent back out to you.
Okay.
That will be what, and just remember, and I know you know this, John, and everyone, but I'll just for the public, any changes you want to make, you have no you have no limitations on what that could be. It'd be once you pass this, as you know. So this is good, at least that you come to the next meeting. If there's something substantial now, then would be the time to do it.
And we'll put this on the website.
It will be after the 16th. It will be on the website and in the newspaper for 20 days, advertised for 20 days and available here for anyone who wants to come in and take a look at it.
There being no other business before the board,
Move to adjourn.
we'll adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.